You see, as some of these guys ascend right up the ranks, they do. Like Jon Jones started having trouble with Dana, right? But didn't have it until
Jon Jones was having all sorts
well, he's got trouble
of
with everybody.
His problems, I think, had very little to do with Dana and more to do with his actions outside of the cage. I mean, inside the octagon, and the way he was promoted fantastic. But he's just crazy.
Yeah,
Jon's crazy. You know,
Jon is crazy.
Jon needs a babysitter. I mean, Jon's the baddest motherfucker at 205 ever. He just needs a babysitter. How
anyone let him drive a car anymore when you got that much money is beyond me. Like, pay your buddy 40 grand a year,
exactly,
and have him drive you permanently.
Yeah.
Like, why he was driving his own car? Yeah, that one's beyond me.
Well, they didn't know until they bought him a Bentley, and then he wrapped it around a tree. But I mean, that's when they should have known.
But then there was the other one where he hit and the hit and run was after that one.
Yep, the hit and run was after that one, and then there was the other one we got pulled over speeding in his Corvette. He told the cop to go fuck himself.
Terrible decision. What are you doing?
He's a fucking wild dude.
Yes.
That's why he's so good. It's one of the reasons why he's so good.
Absolutely. But then you got to put safeguards in place, right? Like you're making how many million a year? Multiple, at least.
For sure.
You can't pay someone 40 grand to drive you around.
Listen, you're preaching to the choir. I mean, bro, I wish I could clone me and send me all through all these camps and be like, Jon, listen to me. Everything's going to be fine. I got a driver. We got a Cadillac. Got an Escalade out here. Get in the car.
Wherever you want to go.
Yeah, we're going places, baby. We're going to have some fun, but no driving. No driving.
None.
We don't need driving. We got music. We got fun. Let's go.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, well, that's what you would have if, you had, like, I don't know what he's doing. I've never been to Albuquerque. I don't know how he's living. But, but you can't babysit everybody. The UFC has 500 fighters on its roster. I mean, how many of those guys are prone to wild behavior? I would say 350.
A lot of them. Yeah. Most of them, right?
Yeah.
High-risk males that fight in a sport where you have the potential to be hurt every single time you step on the job. Yeah. But when you're making millions of dollars, you got to put safeguards against yourself.
Yeah, but I think also what makes Jon so good is his self-confidence. And he probably is like, I got it. Yeah, I fucked up before, but I got it now.
So I'm really into sports psychology, and I want someone to write this book because no one's ever written it. But I think there's this, I call it the hypocritical elite athlete. So there's two sides to every coin, right? And if you're a really elite athlete, you need both sides of those coins. And I'll give you a great example because this is kind of what you're talking about. There's these guys who are ultra elite preparers. They eat right, they sleep right, they train right, they do everything right? But then if one little thing goes wrong, it messes with them, right? If they don't get the right food or their weight cut's bad, they start panicking, right? And then on the opposite side of the coin, there's these cowboys, right? And they're just like, I'm not going to eat right, I'm not going to sleep right, I'm not going to do anything right. But when it's time to step in the cage, I'm going to fight my ass off, and nothing's going to bother me, right? And so you need both sides of those coins to make it whole. And so you want someone, ideally, who does everything right, but at the same time, when something goes wrong or their toe hurts or whatever, they can just say, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go compete anyways, right? You want to have both sides of those. And that's why I think a lot of the UFC fighters are more on the cowboy side of it. Like, well, I'm not really going to do a lot of things right, but I'm just going to go, I'm a fighter, I'm just going to go fight.
Like cowboy. Like Cowboy Cerrone.
That'd be a fantastic example. And it is, the namesake of my argument.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And it is, it's probably one of the more fascinating things about any form of high stress, high level competition is there's no real guidelines of how to prepare your mind. I mean, everybody teaches you how to wrestle. Everybody teaches you how to kickbox. There's all these martial arts schools that teach you technique. There's very few real, like, rock solid programs of how to manage your mind.
Absolutely.
Like I think you should be taught almost like in a step-by-step basis, like, hey, you get a flat tire. Do you kick your car and scream, or do you just go, this is what it is? And hey, I could have been born in Ethiopia with no feet. Right, I could be living in a fucking coal mine somewhere. No, I'm lucky. I'm fortunate. This is nothing. This is a minor setback.
No, and so like I actually started going to graduate school for sports psychology. I got 9 of the 36 credits done, and then I actually got a scholarship to go further and get it paid for. But I was traveling so much. That was 2007-8 when I was trying to make the Olympic team, and I was gone all the time. And then once I was out of school for a year, I was just like, there's no freaking way I'm not going back to school. I'm not going to sit in a classroom. I'm not going to freaking write papers.
Right.
I'll still study sports psych on my own. Right. And so actually every Monday I do something called the Mental Monday on one of my Facebook pages, and people message me questions and I talk about the mental aspect, because you're right, there aren't enough people that talk about it. And then, in wrestling, there's actually this company that's being highly successful now called Wrestling Mindset, and they have a training program for athletes' minds, because you're right, there's nothing out there.
Is there a website for this?
Yeah, it's wrestlingmindset.com.
No kidding. That's great.
And they're starting
that'll apply to everything.
Well, they're starting to expand into different disciplines. But you're right. I think there's these general principles of sports psych which can kind of go into any domain, right? And you're 100% correct that every single individual is different, right? And one of the, like for me, I'm an overthinker, right? I'm obsessive. I'll do something over and over and over and over again, right? And so like when I was 14, I was at this big national tournament and I was obsessing about who I'd have to wrestle and all this stuff, and it wore me out mentally and I got my ass kicked, right? And my coach said, hey, I was that person many years ago, and it helped me just to talk about fishing, right? Because if I don't want to think about what I'm going to do. I'm not one of those guys, because if I think about it too much, I'll obsess. And so ever since age 15, I've always taught myself and trained myself to not think about the competition within 6 hours, right? So maybe the day before I can think about it, a couple days before I can think about it. But like even when I'm in the MMA locker room, I'm not thinking about my fight. My mind's off of it, because if I don't understand what my strategy is going to be by 6 hours before, and I haven't trained myself by 6 hours before, I'm fucked.
Right.
I'm already fucked. Like, what am I going to do? It's just 6 hours.
Right.
I'm going to come up with a brilliant strategy in 6 hours, So,
right.
like, 6 hours, I intentionally fly people to my fights who are just my friends, who have no intention of telling me what to do MMA-wise, and just want to bullshit backstage. Right? Because
that's really smart.
It keeps me really calm, because otherwise I start obsessing, and that's going to lead to something really negative. So that's like one thing is where, but some people are the opposite. Like they F off too much, and you kind of got to bring them back to focus, right?
Right.
Another sports psych concept is what level of energy do you want going into the competition? Some people, you got to get them amped up. Most people, you got to calm them down quite a bit. Like, let's relax, let's execute, because when you're too amped up, you're not going to execute.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of these sports psych concepts that can cross over many different genres, but you're right, no one trains you about it.
I think it's a huge part of the sport, and it's overlooked, because the sport is not just, and I think this is true with every sport, the sport's not just the movements that you make, it's what's going on inside the machine. The manager of the body is the mind, and if the manager is like poorly formed and the structure's all out of whack, and you have like, whenever a problem comes up, you fall right into a pit. All these things should be addressed, and you should develop this mindset, develop the ability to manage your mindset I think at a young age. I think it's really critical.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one interesting thing, which I don't know if it's going to happen in MMA or not, we'll see, right? There's very few people who came from a wrestling background that are head coaches of MMA teams. Right, who came from this very, very structured environment of, say, college wrestling. It's like I remember my first training camp, I went to American Top Team in Florida, and I show up, it's 11 o'clock, practice, show up at 11 o'clock.
Right.
Where's everyone at? Right? And then we started at 11:45, like 45 minutes late. And then so the next day I'm like, well, am I supposed to show up at 11:45 or should I show up at 11? Because if we say 11:45, I can show up at 11:45. So I show up at 11:30, and then they started at 11:20. What the hell? Whereas in college wrestling, if you're a minute late, you're going to get punished in college wrestling, right? It's a very structured, organized system. So I'm very curious to see the day where there is an MMA team that is very structured, like a college wrestling team would be. I think it would be very effective towards performance for athletes. But then again, you are going to have, it's a different structure because college wrestlers are poor, right? Where you're going to have a bunch of MMA fighters who get rich and then say, well, I don't want to do what you're saying right now. And how are you going to make them, right? They're the one paying your paycheck. So it does become an interesting circumstance. But I think if there was someone who ran a highly structured mixed martial arts team, as structured as a college team, I think they would have a gigantic amount of success. I think their guys would get a lot better, a lot faster. And I think you'd see a really interesting dynamic develop between the high-level athletes and the coaches.
Well, I think they're still trying to figure out what's the best way to coach fighters, and I think everybody's got their own way of doing it. You know, for us, the Hobby's way is different than the way they do it at American Top Team. Matt Hume is doing it different than the way Duke does it. Everybody's got their own way, and the only way you could tell is how well the athletes compete.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way you really find out who's correct and who needs to make adjustments.
Yeah, and it's really hard in fighting because, I mean, even your highest level camps, how many, say, Bellator and UFC, how many high-level MMA fights do they have per year? Maybe 30? I mean, I think that'd be a lot for most of these teams.
Right.
And so you only get 30 sample sizes, right? Whereas a college wrestling team, you're going to have, between everybody on the team, all 40 guys, you're going to have at least 1,000 matches every single year. Minimum, right? And then obviously every event is scored by team. Every dual meet is scored by team. Every NCAA championship is scored by team. So you get a very good indication of what coaches are doing it right and what coaches are doing it wrong. And then obviously with the recruiting process, the coaches that are doing it right now get the next crop of the best talent, right? And so you have a very good idea of what's working, what is not working. Where in MMA, I think we struggle to see it because the sample size isn't large enough to give us a really, really direct correlation.
Back up. You're not in my thoughts at all.